Miss Milky the Clown, Chrissy Lee. Stephanie, I'm glad to see you here. I actually didn't check in to make absolutely sure that you would be here. So anyway, it's good to see you. As Stephanie says, don't forget to hit the like button. So have any of you guys watched the tennis? Did any of you guys watch the French Open? Loris, good to see you. Good to see you here. Loris is quite a familiar face on Patreon. Barbara Henninger, the new video on Madeleine McCann just came on. I wonder if a lot of people... Yeah, I actually didn't mean to leave it so late. It just took such a long time to edit that particular video. Honey Pie, good to see you. Lillimore Franzen, hug, thank you. Connie Lukens, happy Sunday, good to see you here. Sorry, I was a little bit late, 2 minutes late this time. Good news is it looks like my error message has stopped giving me the error message, so that's at least something. Heather Snyder, hello everyone. Hope all is well here in the dirty South. That's quite a good pun there, Heather. Any of you guys watch the French Open final with Tsitsipas and Djokovic? Any of you guys watch that? Sharon Tuck Henry, good to see you, Sharon. Heather West, good to see you as well. So far, no one looks like been watching the French Open. Barbara says no. Corin Levi, greetings from Geneva. Corin, have you been watching the French Open? Stacy says yes. Stacy, whose side have you been on? Who were you rooting for? Honey Pie says she doesn't watch tennis. Kim Beverly, nice to put a face to the voice. Okay, thank you. Danielle, sweet as candy. The video of Madeleine McCann is, well, you'll have to go out of this live to watch it. It's just been posted about half an hour ago. Jennifer Pruitt. Olympic trials have been amazing. Yeah, so it's the French Open. So I'm wondering whether I should tell you guys who won it for those who still want to watch it. Me Candy says Tsitsipas played great. I was rooting for him. I actually wanted him to win just because he's kind of been the underdog, and Djokovic I think has won 19 times. So I just kind of wanted someone else to kind of overcome him, but alas, he didn't. Sorry, Barbara, I saw that too late. Sorry. Nick Tatters, hello from Loughborough, Leicestershire. Okay, good to see you, Nick. I think it's the first time we've seen you here. Ged from Sweden, good to see you. Yes, everyone loves an underdog. Do you guys know that Roger Federer's mother is South African? Did you guys know that? Okay, so just in terms of something else, I've just uploaded the first book in the Neverest series as an audiobook. That's the 17th audiobook that's now on Patreon. So, if you sign up for the $10 tier, there's quite a lot there. You can sign up for 1 month and just consume audiobooks kind of thing. Get in, consume, get out if you really want to. So anyway, the Neverest is the 17th audiobook, and I'm about to put up the Neverest full audiobook as well. Shah, hi from Dublin, Ireland. I must say, watching the French Open, you get a sense of the height of summer in the Northern Hemisphere, that it's sunny and warm there, whereas here we're having some of our coldest days. I think the coldest month for us is July, probably the opposite for you guys. Do you guys have very warm Augusts, or is July the hottest for you guys? Anne-Marie, I was listening to the same show and stopped it to watch this one. Okay. Well, I appreciate that, Anne. Timmy wants to say hi, it looks like. Hey, Timmy. You want some screen time? Nicole Boutelier, hi there. Chrissy Lee. You say you're in Massachusetts. Katie Kajula, hi from Finland. Gary Two Shoes, hi from Dublin. Okay. I went through Dublin a long time ago. Angela Barlow is in Putnam. Okay. Is that Connecticut? Chris McManus, Melanie Bainell, well, quite a few people here. Okay. How long have we been on? 6 minutes. You know, you could swear that I've put like gravy on my hands the way that he's been licking my hands. Look at this. Look at that. Anyway. Danielle, I'm in Vancouver, Canada, and it is pouring rain over here. I've listened to so much of your channel, but now I can finally put a face to the voice. Okay, well, I've been doing lives for quite a while. Although I guess it's not every day, it's usually on weekends. Timmy brings all the subs to the yard, that's for sure. Hey, Timmy. To bring the subs. Say hello to the subs, Timmy. Okay. Chris McManus, hello from Portugal. Are you in Portugal? What part of Portugal are you in, Chris? Barbara says it was pouring rain when I visited Vancouver as well. Okay. Well, we don't get any rain here in winter. It's kind of our dry season. Nicole says, hey, Timmy. Hey, Timmy. Hey to everyone just joining. Teresa says, Timmy, I love you. Oh, okay. Merit, or is it Marie? Good evening from Norway. Okay, Timmy, I think I'm going to put you down because it's like he's kind of sitting on the armrest. Okay, so you guys know we are talking today about the kind of infamous or famous Shakedown blog post of the 23rd of August. And the title of it was, Is She Chris Watts' Mystery Mistress, right? And obviously it was identifying Nichol Kessinger. And as far as I know, it was the very first time she'd been identified in a fairly formal way. What I mean is there was a little bit of banter about her on social media. You saw a little bit of commentary on Twitter here and there. And, you know, if you weren't really paying attention, you wouldn't have noticed it. And of course, I was paying attention at this stage. I was with the affidavit having come out. I was really watching all of this like a hawk, and I was already in the mode of blogging virtually every day on the Chris Watts case. So I picked up not only on Nichol Kessinger, but in terms of the banter on social media, but also I found her name in the affidavit. And that confirmed for me at least the fact that, you know, her name wasn't just plucked out of thin air. Looks like Timmy wants to come back. He sometimes gets like this. He kind of can't bear to be left alone, kind of thing. And that was one of those times, of course. And then it's quite difficult to concentrate on what I'm saying when your hand is being licked. Timmy, yeah. So I'm just going to go to that post. I did put a link to it in the description, and I'm going to read you the text between Kessinger and Koback. So I'll do that for you guys in a moment. Let me just get to the particular post. So there's kind of a post on Shakedown title, and then there are one or two what I call kind of companion posts on Crime Rocket that just give you a little bit more kind of background on it. So let me start by reading the blog post itself. Now, bear in mind, what I'm about to read out to you is the same thing Kevin Koback read and Nichol Kessinger read. Okay, so the blog post is titled, "Is She Chris Watts' Mystery Mistress?" And it's underneath the title image of Nichol Kessinger. And, the title image was, at that point, I think, the clearest image you could find of Nichol Kessinger. And having said that, it's not particularly clear. It's kind of a fuzzy image. It's kind of definitely an image of Nichol Kessinger when she's younger. She's wearing glasses and certainly not very clear. But one thing that is clear is it definitely was her. And so, posted on the 23rd of August, so 10 days after the incident, this is what I wrote. A Nichol Kessinger is identified on an endorsed witness list for People versus Christopher Lee Watts, case number D06222018 CR002003. Her name appears right at the top immediately after a long list of police officers and FBI agents. And then, this I think is kind of an interesting sort of side issue to Nichol Kessinger's name. Timmy, come. Timmy's decided this is a really great opportunity to try and provide maximum distraction, maximum background noise. Let's see if we can, put him off his game. He's doing quite a good job. So, the name of Chris Watts' unborn son was Nico, Nicko. Timmy, come here. Hey, come. Come, boy. Come. Come, boy. Timmy, come. 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 I think you're going to have to sit on my lap until you can just quieten down. Okay, so if you think about the name Nico, right, Niko, and you think of Nichol Kessinger, there's no K in Nichol. In terms of her name, it's Nichol. So the other thing is Nico. Tell me, Nico and Nicole, but spelled the way Nichol Kessinger's name is spelled. So I just want to contrast that with Nicole Atkinson's name. Nichol Kessinger's name is Nichol. And so if you look at the name kind of quickly, it almost looks like Nico, right? There's the C and the H and the O really standing out, right? And then there's an L, and that's the end of her name. Whereas Nicole Atkinson is Ckole. And so I'm just saying visually, Nichol Kessinger's name and the fact that her surname starts with a K, I think people associated that with Nico. There's been this weird lack of accuracy about the unborn child's name, where people insisted it's Nico, Nico, and of course that's his name on the grave, Nico. But there's absolutely no doubt that Shanann meant to call their son Nico, Niko. And I believe, and I'm sure that this is going to be, some of you are going to disagree, like kind of vehemently, that it was Chris Watts' idea to name his child sort of not after Nichol Kessinger, but to sort of use that spelling. But again, if you think about it, it's kind of weird to begin with, because there is a K in Kessinger, of course, but even if it's Nicole Atkinson, there's a K, Nickole. So I think it's just kind of a silly way that people have felt triggered by Nichol Kessinger, and so they've just tried to remove the sort of K-ness out of Nico's name. But I mean, all of that I think is just cognitive, just kind of a cognitive sense of bias, if that makes sense. In other words, it's just a sense of feeling anti-Nichol Kessinger to such an extent that you want to actually change the name that Shanann gave him, right? It's understandable, but I'm just saying it's not necessarily accurate because it's not actually Nico's name. So I did sort of say in this blog post, I was still saying it's allegedly his mistress because until she came forward, and it was possible that she would never come forward, and if you think about the conversations that took place between Nichol Kessinger and Koback, he was kind of reassuring her that they wouldn't talk to the media. He wasn't talking to the media, and this wouldn't really ever come out. And I don't know about you, but I find that whole side, I kind of find that whole side of it quite weird, how even when Chris Watts spoke at Dodge Correctional, they sort of assured him this would never come out, and then it did come out. So you sort of got to wonder, how did that happen and who authorized it, kind of thing. The other thing that's quite interesting is the text messages, how I found out that this came out in the Discovery, didn't come out in the original Discovery. Those text messages were only released later on, right? So, there was some Discovery that came out, but it only came out sort of separately, kind of in a staggered way, when some people were aware of it and then applied for it. So a few examples of things that came out in the Discovery later on. So it was Discovery, but it only emerged later on. So the one thing was the the doorbell camera. Well, I've just realized I forgot to pour a glass of water, and I can feel my throat's not doing very well. So the one thing is the doorbell camera. That only came out in February, just before the Timmy, come boy. Timmy, come. The doorbell camera stuff came out just before the second confession came out, right? I'm just scared that he's dragging his bed over the cords that are on that side now. So I'm wondering whether I need to get up and do something about this. Timmy, come here. Come, boy. Timmy, come. Here. Come, boy. Okay, so it's just one of those nights where, it's quite an important subject. And of course, it's a great moment to, F it up. So that was the one example. The other example of the Discovery that was staggered was Nicole Atkinson's interview that came out later on. Timmy, come. If only I can. Anyway, so that is something that a lot of people aren't actually aware of, is Nicole Atkinson talking on, you can actually hear the audio, and it is a 72-page transcript. So, that's something else that's missing. Was missing originally, that did subsequently come to light. And then something else that came to light was the text messages between Nicole Atkinson and Koback. And then something else that came that we became aware of, but it still hasn't come to light, was there's some other video of Nicole Atkinson talking to Koback that still hasn't been released. I know Plunder was trying to get her hands on it, and there was sort of this weird thing where, it's actually in the custody of Frederick PD, and Frederick PD said, no, it's in the custody of, I think, the CBI. And anyway, she was just never able to get hold of it, right? So that is kind of one of the things associated with this case, is a certain amount of discovery dumped on us quite early, but not particularly substantive. Something else that's weirdly not missing from the discovery, but not that easy to find, is the 111-minute phone call. So if you go into the discovery, if you go to the phone data review, you're not going to find that 111-minute phone call. This is not there. And so you might assume, so it just didn't happen. But if you cross-reference that with the Verizon call records, then you do find it there, right? So it was weird how certain things seem to be strategically missing, but on the other hand, we did get it in the end, kind of thing. But one does wonder whether was it intentional or accidental that Nichol Kessinger's name was attached to the original affidavit, because it was subsequently removed. So the affidavit was released as I was watching everything like a hawk, watching for all the releases of information. I was lucky enough to catch the early release of the original affidavit, which is why I caught that information. Thank you, Heather West. You almost always the first one to contribute. Good to see you here. Thanks again for that. Where was I? And so, I was able to catch that in the original release of the affidavit, but when they updated it, they actually took that away, where there was no endorsed witness list. That particular information was, I wouldn't say redacted, it was just gone, just wasn't actually there. So one wonders, was that an accidental release of her name or not? Now, if you actually go and look at the discovery, when they refer to the interviews with Nichol Kessinger, it does actually say something about private. I'm not sure if it's just private or confidential, right? So by her name, there's specifically a kind of a request that this is sensitive information and, we don't really want to release it. I seem to remember something similar with Nicole Atkinson, almost where they've given her a request, and I know Nicole spoke to Zentner about this as well, that she didn't really want to talk to the media. She wanted to stay out of the public gaze, right? And so I think her interview is also classified in that way. But it makes you wonder, if you have to go back in time, and you were in certain people's shoes, knowing how this case would explode later on, would you have wanted to participate? Even if you want to help, even if you're on the side of justice and you want to tell the truth, you are going to be in the crosshairs of the public, and would you want to give up your privacy, even if you're someone who cares about truth and justice? And I think this is a real problem. I think it's a real problem that you're faced with. If you do the right thing, then you can pay a really heavy price for it. So going back to the blog post, unconfirmed, a comment was made on SHAKEDOWN that Nicole's the daughter of Chris Watts' boss, and this was kind of an early kind of myth that came about somewhere. I don't even know where this idea originated. I think part of it was that I don't know if it was his Facebook or his Instagram, but Kessinger's father had as a title image something reading Watts, so it was reading power of some kind, and then sort of said Watts on there. And I think a lot of people understood it, but actually misunderstood that to mean kind of a cryptic message or something like that, when it wasn't. It was just a really bad coincidence. But in another way, in the same way that it sort of made sense that Kessinger was the mistress because she had links to the oil industry, it sort of also made sense that her father could be Chris Watts' boss because he also had links to the oil industry. And at that point, we weren't 100% sure what was going on, because it wasn't clear, did Nichol Kessinger work for Anadarko? That certainly wasn't clear at that point. But what was clear from the affidavit was that he was actively having an affair. And so kind of all you really had to do is go through the endorsed witness list, go through all those names and sort of look, okay, which person on this list is Shanann's friend and a thriver and whatever. So if that was the case, you could kind of exclude them theoretically. And then that left someone who was not Shanann's friend, who was, how can I put it? She was, fully employed by the oil industry. Now, I know some of you are going to be saying, well, I think that Nichol Kessinger and Shanann's paths crossed at some point, or they may have Googled one another. And that brings up the topic of the emails. Do you know what day it is today? Today is the 13th of June. And I think it was June 12th that Nichol Kessinger and Chris Watts exchanged emails, right? And so I just want to address that now, is this whole idea that that Nichol Kessinger had known about Chris Watts for a long, long time. I'm not really contesting that. I'm just contesting that I think their relationship was relatively new, meaning the nature of their relationship in June and then going into July. So I think a lot of people want to believe that Nichol Kessinger was in the picture for a long time, and she was in it was quite a formal relationship by this point, right? And I don't think that that's the case at all. And these emails to me are the best proof of that. So they were sent June 12th, just before 11 o'clock in the morning, and I think these came out later as well. I think Scott Reich was someone who made a special request for these emails, and so they came out also later on in the discovery, right? It was also something that didn't come out immediately. I don't think you can find these emails in the original discovery, right? And so Chris Watts said to Kessinger on June 12th, "Thank you for being honest with me this morning. Truthfulness is so underrated in our culture," right? And then she responds to him, that's what she said. She said to Chris Watts, "Thank you for being honest with me this morning. Truthfulness is so underrated." It's quite an ironic statement that she's making to begin with, because Chris Watts just wasn't honest. And, it is quite weird hearing Nichol Kessinger say truthfulness is so underrated. She's right, but it's just weird hearing it from her in the context of this. And then Watts responded to that, can't quite see the timestamp here, but he responded, "Nikki, I'm a straightforward guy. Lying just complicates things. I think you're absolutely stunning. And from what I've learned about you so far, you seem like an amazing person." I don't think you'd say that kind of thing if you'd known someone for a year already. I don't think you'd say, "From what I've learned about you so far." I don't think that's the kind of thing you say about someone when you've just connected. And then he also says, "I hope to continue to get to know you better since we have a lot in common." So he's like just establishing the common ground. This was around about 3 years ago today, 3 years and 1 day, right? 3 years plus 1. And so it was at this point that I think things started to heat up between them. So I'm not saying that, I'm sure that he saw Kessinger at the office. They were colleagues for quite a while, just that I don't think there was this long period where they were ensconced in a relationship and she was slowly plotting with him, and there's a lot that we don't know what is going on, right? This is clearly, it's pretty transparent what's happening here. The other thing that he said, or Nichol Kessinger said at 2:31 on that Tuesday in June, she said, agreed, it's always nice to find people you can relate to. Now, I don't think she'd be saying it's nice to find a person you can relate to when they'd known one another for a really long time. It's the kind of thing you say when you just setting the boundaries, I guess, but also setting things up for what's about to happen. She says, I enjoy talking to you as well. I feel understood. She goes on to say, I'm looking for someone to build a beautiful life with. It's also not something you say, kind of at this point. If you've known someone for a very long time, you tend to say this stuff when things are initiating, when you want to initiate something. She says, I'm looking for someone to build a beautiful life with. It seems so simple, but is so unrealistic sometimes. Build something similar to what you have done with your wife and those cute little girls. And I think that's a really honest comment from Kessinger. You may dislike her for whatever reason, but Kessinger was from the outside looking in, and from the outside looking in, she was just thinking, wow, what you have looks it looks like the sort of thing I want. I want that kind of picture postcard life. I want the fairy tale. And what she didn't realize is that is exactly what it was. It was something that wasn't real. It was designed to look perfect, and it really wasn't perfect. And he knew that. And he kind of was responding to her, being attracted to this fairy tale, and him thinking, well, let me make a fairy tale with you. You want my fairy tale? Well, how about we make a fairy tale together, right? Thanks, Yvonne. Yvonne says, thanks for keeping it real. And so it's one of the most ironic comments that you've ever seen is Nichol Kessinger saying, I believe in karma. I believe in karma. And, look at where things are now, given that particular comment. Anyway, she said, I believe in karma, so out of respect for myself and you and your family, I think it's best if we keep that friendship at work. Now, let me just reiterate what I've said all along. On June the 12th, she's saying to Chris Watts, I believe in karma, so I think it's best if we keep our friendship at work. Now, why on earth would she be saying that if they'd already been in an affair for a year or whatever people are thinking? And so I think we're often blinded by what we suspect or what we think or what someone is saying or whatever, and we don't look at what we actually know for sure. We don't look at their actual words. And I'm not saying everything that they say is reliable, but certainly where they're communicating with one another, and it's time-stamped, you can get a pretty real sense of what is really happening, what is really authentic, right? Danielle says, the internet searches do not lie. So Danielle, if you're going to say that, what's the point of the internet searches? So if you say those internet searches are valid, so what does it mean? Does it mean that Nichol Kessinger was parking on 2825 Saratoga Trail and sort of like stalking the house, and she'd had plans to sort of do what she's going to do for months? Is that where does it take you? If you say there was a advanced internet search, what does that mean? In other words, you're sort of saying, whoa, Nichol Kessinger searched this person a long time earlier. So where does that take you? All I'm saying is the part that to me is important is when the relationship began. And I think a lot of people make the inference that they'd actually been in a relationship for a long time. And if you can make that stick, then you have a situation that's a little bit like Patrick Frazee and Crystal Kenny. And what I'm saying is you don't have that situation. Certainly not from Chris Watts' perspective, right? And so just to go through the last email from June 12th, sent, right at the end of that day, 21 minutes past 4. It might have actually even been sent from home, or from his phone from home, I'm not sure, but it's from Chris Watts to Kessinger, and it's sent, as I said, 21 minutes past 4. He writes, Nikki, yes, a beautiful life is something that is hard to find in this world, since people always seem to have an agenda for everything. Now, one wonders what he's saying there, whether he's saying that the beautiful life they have is actually part of the MLM agenda. One wonders what he's thinking when he's saying that. Bear in mind, he would actually have an agenda soon. Once he started having an affair, he would have an agenda in terms of his own motives with Kessinger, but also his own motives with his own family. And so if there was anyone that was going to have an agenda very soon, it would be Chris Watts. He also says, I do believe in karma, so agree with that as well. And then he says, any conversations we have will stay between us. So he's kind of saying, I also believe in karma, so let's be careful, right? And then he says, no need to worry there. So he's just reassuring her. He's sort of saying, almost like, let's take another step and don't worry, I'll be discreet. He's not saying it in so many words. He also gives her his number in the email. It says, my work number is, if you need to get a hold of me in the field. Sometimes email can be tricky. He says, I have an early morning meeting and then I'm doing something for a construction crew on various sites all day. So if I don't see you tomorrow, I hope you have an amazing day. 3 exclamation marks. Now, so he's already sort of setting the scene there for, it seems like they had a really good connection on June 12th. And it seems like he's setting the scene there for what is going to happen next. The other thing that I think is worth considering is, why are there all of these emails from June 12th, which I think are from Anadaka. I think Anadaka got it off their servers or off their browsers, off their computers, but then there's nothing from there onward. So this seems to establish their relationship, but then there's nothing after that. So I think that's another area that's just interesting to comment on, that you've got all of this information, all of these emails from June 12th, and then nothing. Weren't there a lot more emails going on, in the entire month of, July and half of the rest of June and so on? What was going on by email? Would be interesting to know, wouldn't it? Let me just go back to Midnight Sun. Good to see you. Thanks for that. Thanks for the Fox thumbs up. Thank you. I think I actually saw you here in the last live. I saw your name, but then I forgot to acknowledge you. So apologies for that, Midnight Sun. But it's good to see you here. Let's just go through some of your comments. Danielle says, I feel she knew him long before what they admitted to, and I think she did stalk him and his wife prior to her and Chris ever going out. So I'll tell you why I disagree with you a little bit there is, if Nichol was kind of obsessed and whatever, then I think she wouldn't have dropped Chris Watts like this, right? So she wouldn't have dropped him and gone to the authorities and gone to them as often as she did. And I think she would have almost like harbored a secret crush on him regardless. And if you're trying to make the case that she wanted him to do what he did and even helped him do what he did, she also wouldn't have dropped him. So, what I struggle to understand is, you get these sort of dark thoughts. Like, I think Nichol Kessinger was this terrible person, 10 times more terrible than anybody realizes, right? But then there's nothing to back that up with. I mean, there's this odd big piece of information here and there, but there's certainly no follow through from Nichol Kessinger herself. if she was so involved, then why did she just drop out of everything? Not try and defend Chris Watts at all. She drops him, and that's it. Why? And you might not know the answer to that, but if you take another analogy, you take Crystal Kenny and Patrick Frazee. Crystal Kenny didn't put up her hand and say, "Oh, I want to talk to the police. I want to tell you everything I know." They knocked on her door a few times, and she sort of showed them a way. And it took quite a long time for her to come forward. I think it was something like a month or so. And then it was under the arrangement of a plea deal, and everything was kept very, very private, right? And part of what she admitted was her involvement, right? That was part of the plea deal. Toggle Tran, thanks very much. Let me just look at some more of your comments. Chris to work on his marriage and ask him if he wasn't... Yeah, can we just keep our comments civilized and I don't know, like just try and speak in a respectful way about other people on this forum. Stephanie, I think you know what I'm talking about. So I'm certainly not like the other creators who refer to Nichol Kessinger's NK, and then whatever you want to say about her is like it's like the Wild West. This isn't one of those channels, okay? Laurel Chisholm, I think she did push him, but not to murder, to make a decision to leave the marriage. Remember, she is pushing him, but she's also under the assumption that the marriage is in its final stages and the divorce is about to be finalized. So, he can lie about that the divorce is about to be finalized while Shanann is away. The problem is when Shanann comes back and she wants to do a gender reveal, the gender reveal is going to reveal that, well, they're happily together and this is the name of their child. And it's once again this happy picture online. And what I do think is quite interesting is Shanann posted very few videos in August, and almost there's like very little thriving going on in North Carolina. No pictures of herself with Chris Watts that in North Carolina. That was something Nicole Atkinson commented about, that she just thought it was so strange. He goes to North Carolina and then suddenly there's nothing really going on social media. I wouldn't say there was nothing, because there was the beach stuff, but you didn't really see the kind of selfies that you'd expect to see of, like a couple. You just didn't really see that. I think him giving her his work number, she may have called him and then got his own personal cell number from that phone conversation. Well, that was via email. It was via email that he sent his work number. And so he obviously responds to her saying, let's keep things at work. He responds by sending his work phone number. Okay, so if we go back to the blog post, so as I say, some of us thought that Nicole's father, Dwayne, was Chris Watts' boss, and I was one of those. I thought that was possible, even probable. I thought, within that situation, who knows kind of what was happening. And maybe Chris Watts felt, he can't, how can I put it, that he was in a work situation and he wanted to preserve that. He wanted to preserve his work situation, if I can put it that way, and he wanted to discard his domestic situation. So I also quoted a couple of tweets on this blog post, and it's interesting how some people just deleted their tweets. They put them up at this point and then got rid of them. someone was just saying here about at this point when Nico was 15 weeks old, also just writing Nico's Niko, that he's a person, right? And so this is what people were thinking 10 days afterwards, and saying a person is a person no matter how small. But then that tweet's deleted. One wonders why on earth would you delete a tweet like that? That seems to be absolutely reasonable. Then there's another one from a guy called Jared Kusi. This tweet was posted the 21st of August. And so this guy was saying, Nichol Kessinger, 30, works in the oil industry as a field engineer for Halliburton. And he said this is most likely the co-worker of Chris Watts with whom he was having the affair. So this tweet went out 2 days before I put up my blog post. I was still collating my information, and her name is spelt right. A lot of what he says in this tweet is correct. He says, I'm assuming she had her internet presence scrubbed because there's zero social media presence. And then that turned out to be true. That early in the day, 10 days after the incident, there was nothing of her on Facebook, although I think that was true anyway. Not that she never had a Facebook presence, but by that point, I don't think she really had one. I do imagine that she probably had some kind of other presence. But one of them was LinkedIn. So what I wrote here in this blog post, there is some reason to believe it may be Nichol Kessinger. A few artifacts are still available online, but the original sites are gone. So this is where it got really interesting. If 10 days after the incident, on the 23rd of August, you were Googling Nichol Kessinger, but spelling it the right way, then you would get certain hits on Google, but these would come up kind of in Google cache. So you'd get a kind of a hit, and if you clicked on the link, either you would see something at that link, or shortly after that you wouldn't. So sometimes the link would be there, another link would be there, and then when you came back to the same thing, it would be scrubbed. So it was actively happening. So I did take some screen grabs of the searches I was doing. And so some of the things that remained almost like a residue were the voter records, and it gave her name as Nichol Lee Kessinger, born 1988, and said something about she's got no political party affiliation. Another one, Nichol Kessinger Arvada, and that was referring to her working for Halliburton and studying, I think, at Colorado State University. And and then there was also I think the sister of Nichol Kessinger that I think I found on LinkedIn, based in Denver, Colorado. And she showed experience as a measurement while drilling field engineer for Halliburton. So this is not Nichol. This is, I'm not going to say her name here. And then I also said that Nichol it appears that she lives in Arvada, Colorado, and that is exactly where she was first interviewed. I didn't know this at that point, but Arvada is where she spoke to the FBI for the first time with her father. And Arvada, Colorado is 22 miles south, following the I-25 route from Frederick. So just 22 miles. Basically, her home, Nichol Kessinger's home, is about halfway between Arvada and Frederick, Chris Watts' home, just to give you a rough idea. And then there was someone else on August the 21st who said, I'm the first one who tweeted Nichol Kessinger. Remember that name as the next Amber Frey, #Shanann Watts. And then that tweet also deleted. You sort of got to wonder, what's that all about? And then there was someone else on August 23rd, the same day this blog post came up. Nichol Kessinger reported to be Chris Watts' lover, who chose the name Nico, now it's spelled Nico, for his unborn and now deceased baby. And so can you see how there's there's not a lot of information, and some people are, with some reason, kind of weaponizing some ideas. So some people are thinking, Chris Watts called his child after his mistress, and I don't think that was the case at all. It's just a weird coincidence. And also the whole thing about his father, was his boss. Sorry, her father was Chris Watts' boss when it was Luke Eppel. There was just absolutely nothing to that rumor, but it kind of made sense at that point when you didn't know a lot, kind of under the circumstances. And then there was only one picture really that we found of Nichol Kessinger at that point. And as I say, she was wearing glasses. She kind of looks youthful just based on the sort of purple tracksuit that she was wearing. She looked as though she was young and healthy and in kind of quite good shape. And I know there are a lot of people who really detest Nichol Kessinger. I kind of feel sorry for her. I feel, she's someone who was in the wrong place at the wrong time and made bad decisions. When I say wrong place, wrong time, I'm saying kind of in Colorado. It's unfortunate that she met Chris Watts when she met him. So don't read anything more into it than that. I feel quite sorry for her. I think she paid a really heavy price for some mistakes that she made, serious mistakes, but there are a lot of people who have affairs that don't have nearly the life-changing grief that Nichol Kessinger has had and I think is still having. And so when I looked at this picture of her, I saw a fresh-faced young woman, and I was quite curious about her. I didn't look at her and despise her. I was curious. I wanted to know, who is this person, and I was quite interested to know, how this relationship developed. What was the substance of their relationship? Because to be honest, I don't particularly, before he committed the crime and after, I've never really been a Chris Watts fanboy. He's always seemed like a bit of a strange fellow, awkward, and I was sort of wondering, what did she see in him? Because she's university educated and had pretty good prospects. So just wondering, what did she see in this guy besides his family? Deborah Booth, thanks very much for that. Sorry, I almost missed your contribution there. Thanks very much. Deborah, where are you in the UK? Chris, you're right about she didn't really seem to have a lot of emotions. That was definitely quite disturbing. I wouldn't say she had none. She does burst out crying at a certain point. And of course, when you say that, people will say, well, those were fake tears. So on the one hand, you say she had no emotion. And when you show that she had emotion, oh, no, well, I'm going to just dismiss that. People say the same thing about Chris Watts. He didn't shed a single tear. I certainly don't want to come up for him. But, let's just be honest. Let's just be accurate. Let's just be factual. In court, you actually see a tear streaming down his face. So it's not that he has no emotion, it's just that there's less emotion than you'd want to see, than you'd expect to see. And I think what you've got to remember is these people are in shock and in denial, talking about Nichol Kessinger. And part of what is happening is she's trying to come to terms with what has happened herself. And she's kind of in a denial herself. And I think part of that, this is a normal protective mechanism. If you say she should have been more truthful, she should have been more transparent. Yes, but if you were her, knowing where we are now, would you have been more transparent? Would you, and I know a lot of people say, oh, all the texts that they sent one another, all the lewd messages and give it to the police. What's wrong with that? Well, that would all be on social media now. And I think the fallout would be 1,000 times worse in a way. So I just think you've got to be realistic in a way. And when I say this, I don't mean this to come to their defense. I'm just saying, as someone who's been in true crime for a while, you can't expect bad people to be completely bad, and you also can't expect good people to be completely good. There's good in bad people, and there's bad in good people. And that is true in the characters in true crime, and it's true with us, right? And it's really naive to expect it to be absolutely black and white, for bad people to be all bad and for good people to be all good. And, you have this weird schizophrenia in the Chris Watts case where Chris Watts is all bad. He's not a good dad, he's not a good husband, he's not a good son-in-law, he's not a good anything. Meanwhile, everyone's, before the crime happened, everyone couldn't say anything bad about him. Everyone said he was a great husband, including Shanann, that he was a good father, including Shanann, that he was a good worker, that he was a kind, nice, generous guy, including his parents-in-law, right? So I think people forget that. People didn't just say that is how they perceived him. And that, in a way, I think was his best defense, was this perception people had of him the whole time. In the same way, people think that Shanann is completely good and completely innocent. And that doesn't mean, that if she's not completely good, that she's evil, that one's trying to make that argument. But if you take away the crime happening, Chris Watts didn't have let's say Chris Watts wanted to divorce Shanann. He didn't want to divorce Shanann because he was evil and she was good, or he was good and she was evil. It's like in any divorce, you want to divorce someone because you're not happy. And there's some things that you're doing that the other person doesn't like, and vice versa. And I think just this weird, simplistic way that people look at the Chris Watts case and kind of want Shanann to be completely innocent and completely good, and Chris Watts to be completely bad and completely evil, and also his mistress. And in a weird way, I actually find the demonizing of Nichol Kessinger is worse than the valorizing of Shanann and the bias against Chris Watts. It almost seems worst against Nichol Kessinger. I find that just quite interesting. Even like the fact that you don't really have that much information about her. No. I'd rather make her the triple murderer, put all the blame on her. Why? Because I don't know what it is. Everyone loves to hate her. It seems to be the general theme. But what does that say about us? I mean, what does that say about us in a scenario of you, even though you don't really have actual evidence, and you might say, yeah, it doesn't matter, I believe it's her. Well, how it works with the law is you need evidence to prosecute. You need facts. You need to be able to go to court and prove something. But it seems like there are a lot of people in this world and a lot of people in social media who are not only prepared to say this, but almost prepared to demand, I don't care that there's no evidence, I believe that, and then the rest follows from that. And there are entire YouTube channels devoted to that psychology, which I think says a lot about us. And bear in mind that thing that Nichol Kessinger said in her email, we live in a very untruthful society. Absolutely we do. And people saying, I wish Nichol Kessinger had been more obvious, more honest. Do you think these YouTube creators are honest? A lot of them that are out there. I actually saw one the other day who's the hero of the driveway theory, and he couldn't actually say. Someone was providing the GPS coordinates for when the work truck ignition went on and when it pulled into the drive, when it's literally the ignition goes on and something like 20-30 seconds later, it in the same minute basically I think it's 5:18. So within that minute, the truck pulls back, and this creator was sort of arguing with the person talking, saying, no, I think it was 20 minutes later or something. And he's the expert of the shadow on the driveways theory, and he wasn't even aware of that aspect of it. That the GPS data shows that the truck started at 5:18 and ran for 27 minutes and then pulled out at 5:46. And you'd think that he would know those numbers off the top of his head, kind of thing. But, facts don't seem to matter. It matters what people want to listen to and what they want to hear. And so you tell them those stories. And true crime really needs that not to happen. It needs us to know what the facts are. And that's why I say, if you want to make aspersions about the length of their relationship, well, look at those emails. So you try and balance these aspersions you're making with what is being said in those emails. That's all, right? Don't make the whole thing happen in your mind. Try and use some of the information we've got available, and we've got quite a lot of information available. So, what is quite interesting, having posted this thing, is she Chris Watts' mystery mistress? On September the 5th, news came out. So this is something like 2 weeks later. So 2 weeks after it started trickling into the public space, the social media space. It certainly wasn't in the mainstream media for a long time. There was news then of another mistress that he may have met on Tinder. And what is really weird about what followed there was, I think all of that was totally mischievous. The whole thing with Trent Bolt and Amanda McMahon didn't seem to go anywhere. It was extremely, how can I put it? It was like tabloid fodder, and a lot of the stuff made international headlines even, but it never went anywhere. There was no, when do you hear about Trent Bolt now? And one's got to wonder what that was all about. Is that just, people in society that wanted attention? Is that just dysfunctional people that are also just, it's just a society where there are a lot of people who want attention even for the worst possible reason. Someone who wants to say that they had a relationship with Chris Watts, with a triple murderer, when they didn't. They want to be associated with him just to get attention, right? And none of that panned out. But what I found quite weird was, so Nichol Kessinger sort of comes out, and the mainstream media don't really say anything about it, but then they do cotton on to Amanda McMahon and Trent Bolt. Trent Bolt appeared on HLN, and nothing happened to Nichol Kessinger. So you sort of wonder, was the point of that to misdirect us away from Nichol Kessinger so that you just forget about her? Was that a scheme where someone sort of sat down and said, well, you know what, Nichol Kessinger's name shouldn't have gotten out into the public. We need to now muddy the narrative, right? Or were these just random individuals who, in a weird way, were doing Nichol Kessinger a favor? Because if you were like me and you were trying to find out what was going on, then when you saw these other individuals, you would tend to think, well, what is going on now? Is Nichol Kessinger so important? And the thing you couldn't get away from was, in the affidavit it said, he was actively having an affair with his co-worker, right? And it seemed to indicate that it was a woman, it was a mistress, and it was a co-worker, so it had to be someone working there. And of course, I don't think Amanda McMahon worked there, and Trent Bolt didn't either. But I must say, I was certainly someone who was considering the possibility that Chris Watts might be homosexual or bisexual. And the reason that I thought that was I thought there's something about him that's very different. Just meaning he's quite a reserved guy. And I wonder if he's reserved because he's keeping something back, because he's got a secret. And his secret is sexuality, right? And I think I was kind of right, because the secret was in that area, but it didn't really have anything to do with his orientation, as it turned out. So, it is very easy in the beginning to get caught along a strand and go along with it, and you think it's true because you've got reason to believe so. You've got kind of a gut feeling, but do you have actual evidence? Do you have actual information? Okay, so from here, let's go to. It's actually quite weird. I'm looking at the affidavit of Chris Watts in front of me, and I can actually see the names. Like, I'm just trying to see if I can see. I can see Nathaniel Trinastich, Taylor Welch, Eddie Maloney, a lot of people that we never even really heard of. And there's Nichol Kessinger. It says address pending. To the right of Nichol Kessinger is Cody Roberts. Graham Coder is directly above her. Directly above Graham Coder is Kevin Koback. Diagonally above that is Stacey Galbraith. I would show you what I'm seeing, but there are kind of addresses. Some of it's FBI addresses, but I mean, some of it is. I just don't think it's. Just want to not make a mistake and show you what some people might regard as private information, but I'm just saying that the link in that blog post still seems to be working to this particular motion. So I know it was redacted, but I mean, I can still read it here. So it definitely is a bit weird. So I'm now going to take you to a blog post I wrote on the August the 28th, 2019. And this is dealing with the correspondence between Kevin Koback and Kessinger. So yeah, they're actually discussing this blog post. Is she Chris Watts' mistress, right? Now, I can tell you when I was blogging on Crime Rocket every day, I was watching HLN every day. I was watching what's her name? I can't believe it. I'm having a bit of a brain. Let me look. Some of you help me. Who's the lady on HLN who was doing the daily coverage? I don't know why I'm having a bit of a. Ashley Banfield, yeah. So I was watching that every day. I wouldn't be surprised if the authorities were also watching that, watching what they knew about law enforcement. Who knows whether law enforcement was actually passing some things on to them deliberately, right? But at the same time, I sort of wondered, is Ashley Banfield watching me? Is Ashley Banfield reading my blogs? And before long, I had the answer. I got contacted by ABC News. I also got contacted by certain people that are in the inner part of the Watts case, people that were part of the news at the time, talking about some of the central characters. I was contacted directly by them. Some of them weren't very happy with me. And so I knew, I was getting people's attention. Sometimes it felt quite unfair that I was simply trying to record what was happening and provide like an archive and a resource, and there were some people that didn't like that at all. It's like, please don't say anything, please be quiet, let all of this be resolved in court. And of course it never was, right? And so the fact that it never went to trial, what you were left with were, in terms of knowing some of the details of what was going on, this online record was of some worth, right? If only Timmy had thumbs, he could get Nick some water. That's true. So far, my throat's doing okay. I also really like actually Banfield, and I was shocked when she was suddenly no longer on the air anymore. I would love to know what that was all about. Roger, I know what it's called. I just don't want to say that second word because one's got to be a little bit careful. You say a certain word and YouTube doesn't like it. Okay, so let me take you through that. So this is what I wrote. I think I put a copy to the link of this particular correspondence between Koback and Kessinger. I think I put the link in the description so you can check it out on your own time. So I wrote this August 28th, 2019, so around about a year after I'd posted Is She the Mystery Mistress? And this is what I wrote. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation and those at the center of the Watts case have been actively reading these blogs. Here's how we know. Between 9:45 and 10:09 on the morning of August 29th, 2018, that was a Wednesday, Nichol Kessinger sends Colorado Bureau of Investigation Agent Kevin Koback the following text. You can read, there's a screen grab of the text. You can read it on that blog post, and she sends to him, did you see the news? Right? And I think it's quite sort of emblematic, the fact that her first words to him that morning are about what is happening in the media, right? Did you see the news? And Koback answers yes. Then she says, think that's a real claim? If so, think you can find him? Now, I could be wrong, but I think this is a reference to Trent Bolt. I think this was a reference to him coming on the scene at this particular point. And it's interesting that she is activated by this. She's contacting Koback to draw his attention to it or to find out what he thinks about it. And she's also asking, do you think it's true? Do you think it's legitimate? Do you think it's authentic, right? Just remind me, I must explain to you how the most authentic voice in true crime came about, because someone was giving me a bit of a hard time about that. So Nichol Kessinger says to Koback, do you think that's a real claim? And do you think you can find him? And then he answers, no idea. So no idea if it's a real claim. Do you think you can find him? Yes. And they did find him ultimately. Coda actually interviewed Trent Bolt not long after that. Then Koback says, did he ever mention anything about that? That's kind of a cryptic way of saying, did Chris Watts ever mention anything about, I guess, being with men or this guy? And so she says, not at all. I don't know if I believe this yet, but he fooled me into thinking he was a much different person than he is. So anything is possible. And that sounds legitimate to me because, at the time you might think, well, who knows? But, I don't think that whole line of inquiry really went anywhere. The whole Trent Bolt thing fizzled, right? But it is interesting that she said, absolutely not. He didn't mention anything. And she says, I don't know if I believe this yet, but he fooled me into thinking he was a much different person than he is. So anything is possible. And again, for those cynical people who really dislike Nichol Kessinger, you might think whatever you think about that statement, but it sounds quite genuine to me. I don't know why she wouldn't speak in a sincere way to Koback. I'm not saying all the time, but I'm sure some of her correspondence to him was just ordinary and honest. And so saying, he fooled me into thinking he was a much different person than he is. I mean, how can you be more different than if you commit the crime that he committed? And then she says, but I do have some dates, and then that part is cut off. So I might take you Okay, so there it is. She says, but I do have some dates for things he said that I think are kind of in line with some things that other man claimed. I already had them on my list to talk to you about. Now, this is definitely quite weird, is she contacts Koback to ask him about the news. He asks her, did he mention anything about that? And then she's suddenly like armed with, well, I've got some dates for things he said that are in line with some things the other man claimed. Now, I'm not quite sure who this other man is. And then Koback responds, okay. And then he responds, have you seen this? And he provides a link to Shakedown title. In the link is the date, 2018-08-23, is she Chris Watts' mystery mistress? And then there's even a little bit of a preview of the blog post that appears in the text, where you see a little bit of Nichol Kessinger's face there. Now, what I think is quite interesting is Nichol Kessinger says to him, did you see the news? Right? And Koback answers yes. Koback doesn't really seem to want to talk really about that. He wants to talk about this blog post. That's his response, essentially. He says, have you seen this? And basically what Koback seems to be saying is, do you realize that people know it's you? And what do you think about that? Right? And as I said, I posted that blog 2 days after Watts appeared in court for the second time, based on the information presented and later removed or redacted from the warrantless arrest affidavit. Since the affidavit explicitly mentioned Watts was having an affair with a co-worker, it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out who she was. All one had to do was go through the list of female names on the affidavit, exclude those involved in law enforcement, and cross-reference those affiliated with the oil industry. More likely than not, the likely candidate would be reasonably attractive and probably, though not necessarily, close to Watts' age or slightly younger. That was the other part. You might not know for sure that someone was working in the oil industry. So the other part that you would sort of need to look at is, okay, here's a name that's appearing in the affidavit, and then look at, try and Google this person and see if you can find them, and then ask yourself, is she the right age? And can you see this person with what? Can you see them together? So that was another part of it. So I said, in the end, there was only one name, one likely candidate that stood out. A certain Nichol Kessinger was one of a handful of names listed as address pending. I'm not going to go through the others that I saw there, but there were a couple that were spelled, the names were spelled incorrectly. But there were definitely a couple of other names that made you want to check, like Sam Paisley. But none of these individuals had connections to the oil industry. And half of the women weren't even resident in Colorado. So it required a lot of checking to be absolutely sure. And then there was another compelling reason why it probably was Kessinger, because there was almost no evidence of her online. So, you had this weird thing of the person that you're looking for. Well, if you can find their social media, then it probably isn't her, if that makes sense. You had this weird reverse psychology going on. So the fact that you thought it was Nichol Kessinger, but you couldn't find anything about her, was starting to it wasn't absolute evidence, but it was certainly odd, that kind of thing, because today everyone is kind of on social media. And so I said, as early as August 23rd, Kessinger scrubbed virtually all traces of herself online, but not everything. This photo, for example, came up, and that's the photo you see previewed in the text messages between the CBI agent and Nichol Kessinger herself. And then I think in this particular post, Google Cache still had a reference to Kessinger working for Halliburton under a certain website. And then this was her, this was her response to Koback's message. So Koback confronts her with this post that I wrote on Shakedown. Is she the mystery mistress? And it's her picture and her name and certain details about her. And she says, yeah, I saw that. So it wasn't as though Koback's telling her, go and look at this, and then she goes and looks and is like, oh no, she'd already seen it. But she doesn't tell him that, right? So in any event, he sees it, he's seen it, passes on to her, she's already seen it, and she's quite sort of takes it in her stride. She says, those people are grasping at straws. And I think if only that were true, because again, look at where we are now. I think Kessinger would have wished that were true, that we were grasping at straws, that we didn't know a name, and that we, you know what I mean? But, you know, I think she was trying to, what's the word? Comfort herself that things weren't spiraling out of control at this point. And so she says, that picture is very, very old, right? So it was a picture of her, and she was saying, it's very, very old. She doesn't say exactly how old, but, and she says, they don't have my last few employers. So I think the Halliburton was right, but we didn't know about Tasman Geosciences, or the fact that she was definitely at Anadarko. So I think she thought there's still some room for interpretation here. So she's kind of saying, you know what, they haven't quite made the connection yet. And then she said, or even my last few addresses for that matter. She says, I'm really doing my best to, no, I think the section terminates there. As I say, you know, it did turn out to be Kessinger all along. And what was interesting was the media only disclosed her identity in an exclusive on November the 16th. So Shakedown, my blog post, provided kind of an exclusive on the 23rd of August, and the media didn't want to touch it. I find that very, very interesting. Because if you look back at it from the present, from now, and you said, okay, well, and I've just explained to you how I drew the conclusion that I drew, you can't say that you made assumptions, or that it wasn't based on, how can I put it? It wasn't based on logic and on facts, maybe incomplete, but it certainly was a lot more complete and compelling than Trent Bolt, his story. And I mean, his name doesn't even appear on the affidavit. So I think it does show you to some extent that the media can be misdirected with a carrot in a way, and that can then misdirect a lot of other people as well. I also think that there's more to it than that. I also think, I don't want to talk conspiracy here, but I think the media may have been instructed by, who knows, someone, don't say anything about Nichol Kessinger, who knows. We want to protect her identity, something like that. The fact that she came out when she was ready, in other words, that the media told her story when, you know, she approached the Denver Post, and the media then provided that story when she was ready. I think that is very interesting. And I do think there's a certain amount of cooperation behind the scenes between the media and law enforcement that we often don't know about. The media and prosecutors are kind of on the same team in a weird way. They're trying to get the same result. So that Denver Post exclusive came out 3 days before the final sentencing hearing. But the real scoop had been published by me almost 3 months earlier, just 10 days after the incident. So I think what I was trying to show was just how, I mean, that's why I wrote the very first book in the series. I was trying to show how much you can know before the case goes to trial, before all the information comes out, before you spoon-fed it. if you are intelligent and you are looking at the information and you are, not going down every little rabbit hole, you can make a contribution to the extent that it may even impact the actual players in a crime, in a true crime scenario, right? Nick, very good point. There seems to be cooperation between reporters and law enforcement. In late August, Kessinger was right about one thing. People were grasping at straws because tight control was being managed around the information in this case. Some of the less intuitive argued in the months that followed that Kessinger wasn't necessarily the mystery mistress because there wasn't absolute proof that she worked at Anadarko. Another thing that I think is quite interesting, if you just think about it, is a blog post like this comes out and none of the workers at Anadarko leave a comment saying, yes, it's true. I know who it is. Do you know what I mean? So people who knew things didn't kept it secret. Do you know what I'm saying? And there were a lot. There would be people that worked there and friends of family and all that kind of thing. And they didn't come forward either. I'm just trying to think what's the other side to that as well. You sort of also got to wonder at what point would Chris Watts' family members have known about Nichol Kessinger. I'm talking about his mother and father. When did they know? And, they could also have sort of come forward and they didn't either. And so it often feels very weird when you are running something like a website and you're trying to get all the information you can, and there are people out there that are reading it every day and just looking on, and I don't know whether they rub their hands like, still hasn't found that out, that they still don't know this, they still don't know that. And it's almost like, it's better that the public don't know things. I certainly understand that in the when you're talking about someone like Nichol Kessinger and privacy, but when you're talking about what happened, what happened here, what is the, what happened in this crime, and then the crime doesn't even go to trial, and then you still rub your hands, I'm so glad they never found out about this and about that. It's under situations like that crimes take place, under these shadows and people keeping secrets from one another. And so, you might look at the Chris Watts case and point and say, he's evil and he didn't tell the truth. But there's, in a weird way, this weird web around all of that where a lot of other people aren't really being forthcoming either. We're not a very transparent society. We're not a very honest society, So what I wrote is the media remained strangely silent on the matter while going crazy about Trent Bolt, as well as another dubious mistress Watts supposedly met on Tinder. In hindsight, both of these charlatans appeared to be either random attempts by individuals to hog the limelight, or someone was purposefully and strategically trying to misdirect attention and speculation away from Kessinger and Anadarko in the run-up to the trial in November. Okay. Let me look at your comments here. Paul T. is a member. His parents would have possibly supported his choices, Brenda says. Liz Graham, of all the places to take him, I've never ever for that, the panic. Okay. I don't know if I should take it further than that. Do you guys want me to read out some of the other texts between Kessinger and Koback? Sharon says yes. Lily says more. Okay. Well, we had an hour and a half. I don't really want to go on for too much longer. What I can do is, guys, if you want me to read those texts, is there anyone who wants to encourage me with a super chat? Barbara Henninger, Belinda van den Heever, good to see you here. Yvonne, look at all these yeses. Emma Roth. Okay, so let me see what I can find here. Might just take a little while. Sakura Girl is also saying yes. So there's some text messages from August the 18th, that's Saturday, at 3:45, where Kessinger says, thank you, Lily. Thanks a lot. Remember, I'm working. You guys are maybe entertained. I'm working on a Sunday night. Thanks, Yvonne. Okay, so Nichol Kessinger says to Koback, I remember more. I'm with my family tonight, and it's a safe and positive environment for me right now. I can give you time first thing in the morning if you would like. Right, so this is a Saturday, and she's basically saying, I've remembered more over the weekend, and I can give you time first thing in the morning. I'm not sure if she's meaning Sunday morning or probably Monday morning. Anyway, the next day, Sunday, August the 19th at 7:39 p.m. Koback responds. So he takes quite a long time to respond. He says, okay, I'm out of town until Tuesday. Can you wait until then? So Koback's kind of not even in a rush to get this information, right? I think I must just thank someone. Grammar Green, thank you very much. I think it's the first time I've ever asked for a super chat. We've actually said, guys, I think it's quite funny. Okay, so anyway, so Koback says he's out of town until Tuesday. Can you wait until then? Now, I think you must bear this in mind. If you want to throw stones at Nichol Kessinger, you say, why didn't she come forward? Why didn't she say? You've got her saying, I've remembered some more, and the agent saying, I can't actually see you first thing on Monday. Is Tuesday okay? There's a little bit of nuance in that. Do you see what I'm talking about? Yvonne says, no, more of your thoughts, please. More of my thoughts? What do you mean, not more of this? Anyway, so Koback says, can you wait until then? Kessinger responds, yes, sir. Then Koback says, okay, thanks. You doing okay? And Kessinger responds, I'm all right. Inform my employer of the situation. Getting ready to head to a safe spot tonight in case my name is released tomorrow. APC released me for extended leave. Meet Hazel tomorrow. Now, if you just think about the situation that she's in, this is the very early days, right? Just think about the situation. She's spoken to law enforcement, and she's now got to find somewhere safe to stay. In other words, she can't stay in her own home. She's kind of got to find a safe house. Now, so on the one hand, you say, can you know what, I don't understand. Can't Nichol Kessinger just say everything, right? On the other hand, she's got to move out of her own home and go and live somewhere else because it's not safe for her. And she's worried that her name may be released. And it was released, and we know what happened. So she did pay a pretty heavy price very early on. She lost quite a lot based on this. Thanks a lot, Stephanie, number one fan. Thanks a lot for moderating, Stephanie. It's good to have you here as well. Also, Mama Pink, love your channel, love your intro. Thanks. Your hard work doesn't go unnoticed. Thanks a lot. Thanks, guys. So she says, I'm meeting Hazel tomorrow. Hazel was the victim advocate, I seem to remember. And it's something that I think a lot of people have forgotten about in the John Benet Ramsey case. There were actually two victim advocates that went to the Ramsey home in the middle of the whole ransom note thing. And
I don't know if those people have ever been, you've never seen them in documentaries, and those people would be great to talk to, I think. I think some people that have been overlooked. Anyway, Kessinger says here, meeting Hazel tomorrow, meaning Monday, trying to be proactive and positive. You guys are releasing his motive in the affidavit tomorrow, right? And so she's trying to just find out, when are you releasing the affidavit? And at this point, she's still kind of safe from scrutiny and from everything. The bomb hasn't exploded yet. And she wants to know, when is this information coming out, right? And then she says, you guys are releasing his motive in the affidavit tomorrow. And what I think is quite interesting with that, thanks a lot, Loris. Thanks a lot. Thank you. What I think is very interesting with that is she's not so much concerned with the affidavit, although I think she is. She's concerned with the motive, and the motive being, are law enforcement going to say he did this because of her, right? And I think it is largely why he committed the crime. In fact, I would say the majority of his motive has got to do with Nichol Kessinger, meaning because he wanted to be with her, because he was addicted to her, because he was so inexperienced in this matter, because he was so taken with her. But notice what I'm saying. It's Chris Watts, and his feelings towards Kessinger. That's his motive. It's not her pulling strings or anything. She was pulling relationship strings. She wasn't pulling strings that go into the crime part of it, right? And so, but she's concerned that is what people are going to think, and she was right, because that was what people were going to think, and that was part of it. People were going to blame her because she was to blame for being in that situation. She was having an affair with him. So she was part of his motive. She wasn't part of the crime being executed, as in she wasn't directly part of that, but I think she definitely was part of his motive. But there were other parts of it as well. The debt, the kind of person he was compared to Shanann, the kind of person Kessinger was compared to him. I think Kessinger was also quite demanding. If you want to be with me, you need to get out of your marriage. I don't want to be in the situation where you, with your wife and seeing me, you need to choose one of us. And anyway, so Koback responds, motive is never released. That is media speculation. It's quite interesting what Koback says there, him saying motive is never released. You could sort of argue and say it certainly was released in part by the DA at the sentencing, but I think the part that's quite interesting is the CBI saying motive is never released. It's almost like the CBI, I don't know, I just find that quite an interesting point, that the CBI, it's almost like they have this rule, motive is never released. So he probably means to the public or to the media, but I think motive is passed on probably to law enforcement. It's something they discuss, and I think it is something that they talk to the prosecutors about. It may not be released because it's legally sensitive by the investigators, but I think it is passed on and it is used by other parties, if that makes sense. But what I think is interesting here is what is revealed is the protocols of certain agencies here, right? Targol Tran, in my view, Chris had a pattern of wanting to fool everyone in order to accomplish what he wanted. He continues to do so to this day. Yvonne Robinson, wow, check your answer afterwards. Does not feel good from this end as a reader of your books and watched of your channel. Sorry, Yvonne, I'm not following you. Did I say something? let me look at what you said previously. Yeah, sorry, I don't know if I understood what your previous comment was. You said no more of your thoughts, please. So I don't know what you meant there, whether you meant no, don't talk about the, you know, I don't know. I find it's like so easy to offend people. You know, you're not trying to offend anyone, but it's so easy for some people to take offense. I don't know what you meant there. Did you want me to talk more about my thoughts, or do you want me to talk more about that? I don't know. That's why I said that. Anyway, I'm sorry that you read that the wrong way. If you've got a question you want to ask me that's beyond the interactions, and maybe I can answer that. Okay, so just going on a little bit further, Nichol Kessinger says thank you, and then on August the 21st, she says, and this is quite early, I think it's 7 o'clock in the morning, 7:31 in the morning, she says, what time would you like to talk today? So she is approaching him, right? She contacts him before he contacts her. Again, this is just showing her involvement and her enthusiasm, if you even want to use that word. She's approaching him. She's not waiting for him to call. She probably can't sleep either. She's probably worried and haunted by everything that's going on. She's probably watching all the news, and it's becoming a nightmare for her. And he says, good morning. Do you want to meet or talk via the phone? So Koback's quite relaxed. You know, you can do what you want to do. And she says at 12:33, is lunch still a good time for you? And he says he's in a meeting. It'll be a few. How about late afternoon? Then she says, what time are you thinking? He says, I have another meeting at 2, maybe about 4 o'clock. So, you know, she'd said, can we meet first thing in the morning? Now it's delayed all the way to 4 o'clock, right? She says, okay. And then he says, I'll call you around then. So he actually says, let's make this a phone call. You don't need to actually come in. Then on Tuesday, August the 21st at 11 minutes to 4, at 11 minutes to 4, she says, still a go for 4 o'clock. And then she only gets an answer from him at 10 past 6 in the evening. That's on Tuesday, August 21st. And then he says, 6:30, will you be available? Just got to my office. So what was happening at this point was a lot of meetings with the investigators, the CBI, probably the FBI, the DA, and they're all trying to decide what they're going to do with this situation. And Kessinger's actually on the outside. She's already given them some information. She's actually kind of knocking on the door saying, I've remembered this, I've remembered that. Do you want me to come in the morning? How about this time? How about that time? And then he eventually says, well, can you come at 6:30 this evening after he said 4 o'clock, right? Laurel says, Nick, thank you and your mods for these Sunday lives. They're easy for me to remember. Okay. And then she says, yes, sir. And Koback responds, okay, thanks. Sorry, traffic was terrible. And then Kessinger says, if I have to sign a release, then I'll come meet you myself. So she's saying, if I've got to sign something, I'll come in directly. We don't have to do this over the phone. And then I think Koback responds, you do. In other words, you do need to sign a release. I think this has to do with the release of her phone or the release of the data of her phone. She's got to sign that. So he's saying you do need to come in. And then he says, where is best and what time? I look open tomorrow. Now it looks like they
they are changing it from 6:30 that night to the next morning. Then she says, I think I need to get my phone swapped out, and I'm unsure how long that is going to take, hoping I can get that done over the phone. I really don't want to go to Verizon. Let me do some research. I need to get a spare phone while I'm at it. And there have been some people talking about the fact that between the one handset she was using and another one, may have been something about a search or whatever. I know some people have spoken about that. I'm just trying to think how the explanation goes, because at a previous time, she was involved with a MLM company. I forget the name. Stephanie might remember, and so it might be a scenario where, as part of the MLM thing, she Googled Shanann, right? I know that's sort of been floated, and that was on an old phone kind of thing. It looks like Yvonne Phillips has left. There was someone on a comment that asked me something that was totally different to what I was talking about. And I try and actually answer all the messages that I get. And so I was just answering messages, and I didn't say, hi, how are you? I just sort of answered the question. And I got an email not long after that saying that this person was in tears because of how I'd answered the thing. And I then emailed her and just really apologized. But I must say, what I think a lot of people don't realize is, while I try and engage with you guys personally, one at a time, there are hundreds of you guys. Like right now, there are 227 people listening to this, right? So, I am trying to give each of you time and each of you a thought. I'm also trying to balance the things I'm trying to convey in my own mind, right? I'm trying to do both of those things. And sometimes it's hard to do both. Sometimes in order to stay on your own brief, if someone's asking something that's totally different, it's difficult to deal with that question for 5 minutes or kind of go completely out and sort of, hi, how are you doing, kind of thing. By the same token, you get what I'm saying. It's just, if you imagine it from my perspective, you are you and you're a person and you want personal attention. But when there are 225 people wanting personal attention, it's difficult to know that you want that. Some person may just want a quick answer, and someone else wants to sort of be credited that, I'm your reader, don't you remember me, kind of thing. I just think that you've got to try and just bear in mind, see things in context, that things aren't meant in a nasty way, right? But I can also see how if someone who's been a loyal follower and a reader, you can sort of feel like, wow, I didn't deserve that. That's not fair. So I can also see that. So going back to the texts, I don't know if I'm going to read too much more of these. Just because we're running out of time, it's almost an hour and 50 minutes. Kessinger says, I can do it all remote. I'll do it tonight and we can meet early tomorrow. So again, she's sort of suggesting let's meet early tomorrow. And then he says, Koback says, okay, that's really early. So again, she's actually trying to get the ball rolling and he's kind of busy. And then she says, whatever time in the morning works for you. And he responds, where can we meet? Where can we meet? And then she says, is your office that one in Lakewood where I met Hazel? Is your office that one in Lakewood where I met Hazel? And then he says, yes. She says, would it be best for me to come there? Do the news people go there?
Koback responds, sure. And there's lots of people on and out, usually reported. He says lots of people on and out, usually reporters don't come there. She says, what time? Bear in mind it's a risk for her to go out and go there because the reporters are lurking around. So it's a risk for her to go there. And she's nevertheless going there, right? He says 10 a.m. and then he says, let's make it 11. Then the next day rolls by, Thursday, August 23rd, 4:18 a.m. That's very early. 4:18 a.m. She says, I really need you guys to approve that therapist. I'm waiting as patiently as possible, but I'm struggling. And you really get that sense from her that she's trying to kind of engage with them. He keeps just kind of moving the ball along kind of thing. So I think I saw another message from Yvonne. Yvonne, please do not take offense. It was not me. All good, still listening. Oh, okay, sorry. I think I must have confused you with another Yvonne. Now I really feel... Anyway, sorry to Yvonne Phillips and thank you to Yvonne Robinson. Thanks a lot. Shame, Yvonne, you've had to give an extra about £10 just to set the record straight on that. So anyway, let's just see Danielle. This is my first live with you that I actually got to catch on time and join in. So thank you for putting the time and effort in to make your channel. Teresa says, bye, Nick, to me. Thank you so much. Stephanie says, Yvonne Robertson, how sweet of you. Bria Lays, honestly, no one else even close to engages the way TCRS on all platforms. I must say, I do actually take quite a lot of time to read. I read all the comments. I try and respond to some of them. And I do respond to a lot on Patreon as well. There's some people that email me. There are people that direct message me on Instagram. There are even a couple of people who WhatsApp me. And so I sort of bear in mind, I'm also writing a book right now. So I'm trying to multitask, right? So, that's just the situation that it is. Okay. NK owned the interview. Liz Graham says, it's such a fantastic stream. It really is. And you're taking the time to address issues as well. So we're almost at the 2-hour mark. What I want to do when we hit the 2-hour mark is talk about why it's called the most authentic voice in true crime. I just want to see if there's anything else to mention in this correspondence. Okay, so Thursday, it's now 23 minutes to 7. And Koback responds, okay, I wrote a letter for that yesterday. Let's talk with Hazel today. Then at 8:33, all of this is happening very early in the morning. She says, thanks. She obviously couldn't get to sleep that night. She says, got access to my old phone and the SIM card is broken, so I couldn't swap them out. I need to either find a phone or I need to go to Verizon. Now what's happening is she's trying to find a phone. So she's finding some other phone and who knows what was on that phone. And then she says, should we still meet today or can you guys give me a day or so to figure it out? So now she's actually suggesting a delay because I think she's going to be giving him her phone and then she's going to need a phone. Then she says, they will give you a new card for free. I think I don't know if that's law enforcement. Then he says, today is great. We can move it till later this afternoon if that helps. Then she says, they only give you a new card free. The current phone I've insured, my iPhone, but I think they're fairly cheap if I can get one for my old Droid. So she previously had an Android phone. What time this afternoon? But she also says that chip is broken. Then he says, I'm heading to my office now and will work with you on whatever time works for you. Anne King says, thanks for all the thoughtful points. Thanks, Anne. Then she says, Verizon doesn't open till 10. I'm going to see what I can do at that time and I will get back to you on a better me time. Then at 10:28, he says, sounds good. I'll be at my office all day. Now, again, this just shows that Kessinger's got to make arrangements to kind of hand her phone over. Think about it yourself. If someone said, I want to see everything that's on your phone, can you give me your phone? I don't know about you, but I would feel pretty inconvenienced by it. And you might say, yeah, it's a crime, you have to do it. Yeah, well, she did do it. But it is nevertheless quite an inconvenience. You have to now give someone your phone. Now you don't have a phone. And so I just want to, I guess what I'm saying is, give her a little credit that she was trying to assist the law enforcement, right? I feel like I'm the only voice that is asking people to give Nichol Kessinger a little bit of credit. I don't know what you guys think. Then she says, okay, I'm on the hunt for a SIM card now. SIM card located, going to... So then he says, so early afternoon. Then she says, yeah, can I come over once I'm done? I have to go to the store in Cherry Creek to get it free. I'll just text you once I'm done there, ? And then he says, sounds good. He says, I remember more, it's not much. And this is where we come back to where she mentions the Shakedown blog. He says, okay, we can really talk when you get here. Then she says, I'm on my way. He says, see you soon. Now it's August the 23rd, 3:32 p.m. Okay, and then these are some other texts. So I'm not going to take it further than this. I'll provide a link to these texts so that you can watch them yourselves. They are online. You can read them, but it probably is worth just looking at what all the text messages in context. So, do any of you guys know how the most authentic voice in true crime came about? Does anyone know about that? Laura says, I give her lots of credit. Liz Graham, I can because I can put the affair aside. It's not a crime. She was single. Yvonne, thanks for that. You asked for super chat at the time. I completely felt on your expertise in this case. Please keep us all going with facts. Thanks, Yvonne. Teresa, no. Belinda Valenieva, no. Okay, so I didn't come up with the most authentic voice in true crime. What I can tell you is that there was a time that I had a co-author where I was writing books with an American called Lisa, based in California. And through the course of writing about Oscar Pistorius and Jodi Arias and O.J. Simpson, we did quite a lot of research and writing together. You sort of just got the sense that, what's lacking in not just the criminals, but in the coverage of the criminals. So you'd often get a documentary about them only to find out that the documentary is also apologia. The documentary is also kind of bogus, or it's got an agenda. And you'll have a spokesperson for someone like the McCanns or Oscar Pistorius. And then you'd wonder, wow, is this spokesperson, what they're saying, is it trustworthy? And this was before fake news was called fake news, right? And so we just started talking about authenticity quite a lot, saying that, that is what is required in us, in people who are pursuing the truth. You want to know what is the authentic narrative. And that's something I often mentioned is I kept saying, you get the narrative that you can prove in a court of law, and you get the narrative that the defendant has, right? And you get the media narrative, and you get this narrative and that narrative, and I would often say, what is the authentic narrative? In other words, it's sort of what's the objective truth? All narratives have got a little piece of the truth here and there. Even the legal narrative isn't the full truth, the full story. A good example of the authentic narrative in the Chris Watts case is the phone data review. But that's just one dimension of the authentic narrative, but it's a very good dimension of it. And so I would often use this word authentic and authenticity. And then I eventually got a review. So it was in a book review that someone said, you know what, you are the most authentic voice in true crime. Not this voice, not this, right, not that, not me speaking, but the voice of my narratives, the voice of the books that I was writing. And so it was kind of something that we were touching on a lot in a lot of the books on Casey Anthony and the various cases that we were covering, Amanda Knox. What is the authentic narrative? This person sort of cottoned on to that idea and was saying, you know what, yours are the most authentic narratives about this or that, right? And I then thought about, when I was thinking about true crime rocket science, there's a time that true crime rocket science didn't exist, and then it did exist. And then I thought, what is true crime rocket science? And then I thought of what this other person had said, and I thought, I quite like the sound of that. So that's how the most authentic voice in true crime came about, was from a reviewer leaving a review about a book. That's how it came about. I hope that is an amusing story to you guys. But there was someone on YouTube who sort of said, I love your channel, but with respect, it seems to be very arrogant of you and a lot of hubris for you to say you are the most authentic voice in true crime. And I get where she's coming from, but actually it wasn't my idea. I mean, I adopted it, but I got the idea from someone else, and I really appreciated her saying it. And I hope it's true, and I hope it's true for you. I love that you don't get involved with drama too. Great story. I try and keep the drama out of it. I don't want to be antagonizing other channels or making this about creators or whatever. Or, there's certain people in the Watts case right now that are that get very emotional and so on. And I want to talk about the facts of the case. It's interesting enough if we do that, if we stick to, what happened. And I just find it so difficult to do that because so few people are. It's so difficult to get the information, just to get the authentic narrative. It's so difficult to do because everyone just wants to jump off that train at the first possibility. The truth is hard. And I was thinking about that with the Everest disaster as well. The truth is hard. If I start talking about the Everest disaster, I'm going to be talking for another half an hour. Stacey didn't know that. Well, now you do, Stacey. Stacey, thanks for moderating. You as well, Bria. Good to see you here, Bria. Thank you for helping. And he says, you are level-headed, kind, and factual. Liz Graham, they lose focus. Maureen Walsh, it is true, your authenticity in the layers of psychological insight are better than any I've listened to. There's a funny sketch on YouTube from an old UK show. If you search Michelle and Webb rocket science, it's worth a watch. Okay. Inspired of because of love the backstory. There's one more thing I can offer you, just because I did solicit super chat and a few of you responded. There's one more thing I can offer you before I go, for those interested. Who wants me to deal with the 5 questions that I asked in the book Neverest and answered them? Right? So not Neverest 4, which is about the Sherpas. In the very first book that I wrote about the Everest disaster, I raised 5 questions. And then I answered them. who would be interested in me going through that, just as a conclusion to this live? By the way, have any of you here listened to the Madeleine McCann thing? So someone says, is it cold there? Yes, it is cold here. And I'm in if I'm not in the coldest room of this building, I'm in the second coldest room. Laura says, me. I know Laura is a big fan of Everest Disaster. Brenda, okay. Emma, okay, so that's enough of you, I think. Okay, so I just found this quite interesting. What has happened to it now? Oh, there it is. I posed 5 questions at the beginning of the very first book I wrote on the Everest disaster, and this is what they were. Number 1, why were there so many people choking up the only path up the mountain, right? Why were there so many people on the summit, on summit day? 2, were the leaders overly pressured by the presence of journalists climbing on the opposing teams? 3, were they locked in a deadly rivalry? 4, or did they just run out of oxygen and time? 5, was it the weather or human error? That's sort of almost a guiding question throughout the whole book, Neverest, and it sort of goes beyond that, asking again and again, was it the weather or human error, right? And so to the answer to the first question, why were there so many people choking up the only path up the mountain? The answer is there were 33 climbers trying to summit on May 10th, 1996. While this is a lot, Everest in 2013 saw 300 summits over the course of 7 days. So if you're going to argue that the summit was crowded in 1996, it just doesn't wash. In 2013, there were 300 summits. I think in the last 2 or 3 years, there was something like 600. So you really can't, it's more than 10 times the number subsequently, and you didn't have close to the level of disaster, right? So, but the fact is, in 1996, it was unusual to have so many people. It was also unusual to have clients being, the whole commercialization of Everest. It was quite unusual to have people paying to go up. The whole idea was unusual. And some of those clients were slow and weak and fairly elderly. There were some guys that were in their, I'm saying elderly to climb Everest. There's definitely an inflection after 40 years of age where the death rate increases suddenly. So you can sort of expect to climb Everest fairly confidently up until the age of 40, and then there's an inflection. So when I say, there were guys in their 50s, I'm not saying you old. I've got to be careful what I say. I'm not saying you old if you're in your 50s. I'm saying if you're trying to climb Everest, your mid-50s is getting on a little bit. And so that was certainly a factor. Queues of 200 climbers, I think even double that, aren't uncommon these days on Everest. So to say, why were there so many people choking up the only path up the mountain on May 10, 1996? Well, Hall's team and Fisher's team were by far the biggest teams at Camp 4 on May 10. So you had 2 very big teams, and to make it worse, they chose to summit on the same day, and they were kind of going head to head, and each team inadvertently placed massive pressure on the other. So if just those big teams had separated and you had one team, going for the summit, you would have relieved the time pressure and the sort of competitive pressure in terms of that. The merger of the teams, as Seconds from Disaster noted, was a fatal flaw in the planning, with slower climbers causing the route to choke up. So you literally had slower climbers from adventure consultants in front of the Mountain Madness climbers, and then they had to get past them. So if you had the slower climbers behind, everyone would have gotten up quicker, because the quick climbers would have gotten up and come down, and the slow climbers would have been as slow as they were.
Fisher wasn't feeling well, so maybe he thought he would give an extra day or two. Possibly reasoned his health was on a rapid decline and he needed to summit before it got any worse. I'm just reading from here. He may have guessed the weather window would not open again for several days. The Taiwanese expedition disobeyed Hall's request not to climb on May 10. So that's another reason why it was quite busy that day, was the Taiwanese expedition climbed when they said they wouldn't. On the other hand, it could have been even busier. The South Africans said they would climb that day and then they didn't. So it could have been worse, I guess. So that's the answer to why were there so many people on the mountain on May 10, 1996. And I think the actual answer to that is that there actually weren't that many on the mountain. You can't really look at that as a problem. It felt like a problem in 1996, but it's not really a problem. The problem is something else. Then 2, were the leaders overly pressured by the presence of journalists climbing on their opposing teams? Answer, yes. 3, were they locked in a deadly rivalry? Were the leaders locked in a deadly rivalry? Answer, yes. Hall and Fisher literally put their lives on the line, and both lost their lives. In Hall's case, besides putting his own life on the line, he risked Hanson's life and drew in Andy Harris. Hall's decision to cut Hanson some slack and allow him to summit Everest ultimately cost the lives of all 3 men from the Adventure Consultants team. 4, so were they locked in a deadly rivalry, or did they just run out of oxygen and time? Was it a deadly rivalry, or did they run out of oxygen and time? Answer, almost all the climbers on both expeditions either ran out of oxygen or time or both. Even Krakauer felt he was running out of both. This was before he'd even reached the summit. Now, something that's really interesting in Everest 4 is I've looked at another expedition from 2009, right? So what's that, 12 years ago. So fairly recent, almost in the middle of the anniversary, and looked at when they summited, when they reached the South Summit, and the circumstances there, and then compared them to 1996. And it really makes a very, very fascinating comparison where certain things that you thought were very big issues in 96, you think about totally differently when you deal with that research in that particular chapter. That's in Everest 4. Dealing with the oxygen, Hutchison, Kessinger, and Task felt that they'd run out of time. Pittman and Number ran out of oxygen early on, but eventually all 11 climbers involved in the huddle ran out of both. So that's quite important to stress, is that eventually all 11 climbers ran out of oxygen and time, essentially. Hanson ran out of oxygen and Hall ran out of time trying to rescue his ailing climber. There's also a very interesting, because I focus on the Sherpas in Everest 4, there's a very interesting interaction on the South Summit between Andy Harris and Lobsang, where Andy Harris wants to come to Hall's aid, and he actually tries to recruit Lobsang into that and offers to pay Lobsang $500 to turn around and take oxygen back the way he's just come. And all of that is a very interesting thought experiment. If he did this, if he did that, and what I some of you may be aware of that, but what you may not be aware of are the circumstances around Lobsang's story, and that's what I go into in Everest 4. Hanson ran out of oxygen. Hall ran out of time trying to rescue his ailing climber. Fisher was very late and slow up and down the mountain, ran out of oxygen and time. 45 minutes spent on the summit almost cost the lives of all 4 of the Mountain Madness clients. Now, just that alone, if the Mountain Madness clients simply spent 15 minutes on the summit, and that's not unreasonable or unusual, if they were just half an hour further down,
they could very well have not gotten caught up in that huddle at all. They could well have gotten to Camp 4 and not still been in the huddle past midnight and had a horrible kind of group near-death experience. This oversight, the length of time they spent on the summit could have been handled better by the junior guide, Beidelman. Beidelman is a really nice guy, a very kind of reserved person, not a confrontational person, and someone who didn't really want to, rock the boat. And I think because of that, he allowed the clients on the summit perhaps longer than they should have been. And then number 5, was it the weather or human error? Human error played a major role in the 1996 disaster, and this is emphasized so much in Neverest 4. You see that aspect just highlighted even more. I say, if we are to assign blame, culpability may be a better word, we have to boil it down to one criterion. So this is oversimplifying to some extent, but if you want to boil down why the 96 Everest disaster happened, the answer is delays on summit day. There's more to it than that, but it basically boils down to delays on summit day led to the disaster. So if you could have speeded up the ascent, then you could have avoided everything. And so to understand why it happened, you've got to look at what was the primary reason for these delays. What's the primary thing that caused these delays? And so you could say, who slowed down the expeditions the most? Who burned up the most resources? And I'm not gonna really take it further than that. Otherwise, we're going to be here another hour, because it does go on a little bit. But that's something I do talk about at the end of Neverest, who I felt were the 3 people most responsible for causing these delays. And you might be surprised who they are. I'm not sure what you guys think, but even when I read it, even though I wrote it, when I reread it, I thought, well, that's true, but you wouldn't really have thought that. So I think that's definitely quite interesting. Any of you here watched the Madeleine McCann video that I put up a few minutes ago? Danielle, sweet as candy, the sister had the note. He takes accountability too. Okay, looks like you guys are talking about Teresa. The Sherpas work so hard on Everest trips. Okay, looks like some of you guys are still talking about the Watts case. So I think I'm going to skedaddle. I'm a little bit hungry. It's 20 past 10. I did nibble on something, but I'm definitely feeling kind of peckish. Laura's halfway through it. Okay, Laura's, you've got some interesting chapters ahead of you. Brenda Lee started, but will continue. Okay. Beverly, lawyer, did not see. Christina, I'm saving McCann's for later. Okay, should be. I must say that took me the whole afternoon, and I still didn't sync all the images the way I wanted it to, and there were things I meant to say that I really wanted, because it's such an easy narrative to waste in a way. Like if you want to make a really salient point, it's so easy to get caught in a little tangent. And it still took me the whole afternoon to do, and there's so many images I didn't quite sync with what I was trying to say, just because there was so much. Bria says, it's really good, make sure to check it out. Well, that's a comfort that you found it good. I really wish I had an editor, so I don't need to worry about everything. I mean, I've got to source the photos, I've got to, do it all. And I really want to focus on the narrative. I really want to focus on telling the story and providing the facts. And the fact that I've also got to worry about images and stuff is just, but the other side of it is, if you delegate that sort of thing, You need someone who knows the case really well. They need to know as well as you do where this image goes and what's relevant. So that's the other side. Lily says it takes hours and hours to edit a video. It does. I think when I'm at the point where I feel a little bit more established and a bit more credible in true crime, where people who come to me for the first time go, wow, this guy is the most authentic voice in true crime, where they don't need convincing, then I might spend a bit more time improving the quality of the video, and maybe instead of making a video a day or over 2 days, take 3 days, half a week or a week, just to bring out a really decent video. And I know there are channels out there who make like one video a month and they get millions of views and the quality is excellent. I'd love to do something like that. I'd love to bring out really good quality. Beverly says her car's broken. Bria says, I can't believe the work you put in. I am prolific, but you can't get away from the fact that quality work requires focus. So, on Friday, I just felt like I cannot do the RIP investigation. It just draws so much out of you. I can't do that and write quite an important chapter I needed to write in Everest 4. I just couldn't do both. I had to choose between the two, just because that energy, you can't just, it's like too much butter over too little bread. You've got to, so, I have tried to write shorter chapters. Interestingly, Everest 4 is a lot longer than I meant for it to be. It's supposed to be 25,000 words. I could Kindle it, and it's probably going to be twice as long, which is, I guess, good for you guys. It should come out probably at the end of this week. Quality is excellent. I think the quality can be better, but I think you've had that credibility since the beginning. Thanks for that. Obviously, you guys who know me know that, but there are a lot of people, the media, I don't know if they regard me as credible. I mean, if you take that blog post, Is She the Mystery Mistress? That was a credible blog post. That was a credible assessment. And I think someone else looking on said, I don't know, maybe they were told not to. That could be possible as well. Stephanie says, it's like when teaching, to write the lesson plans for a substitute is so tedious that it's not worth being absent or sick. Yeah. I mean, I had that when I had the assistant. I just sort of felt the only way you're going to know, for example, the Chris Watts case, which images are kind of emblematic, is when you know the whole Chris Watts case. And then you kind of got to explain everything. So it definitely is difficult. Laura says you're a one-man operation and your output is enormous. Yeah. I learned that as a freelancer. As a freelancer, I do earn my keep off the seat of my pants. So I really had to work hard. It's different from being a salaried worker. But I think that makes you kind of a workaholic. And if you work hard enough at it and you develop enough momentum, then it can become beyond self-sustaining. It can become more than that. And I'm lucky that I've had an American audience that have gotten to know me and trust me and rely on me, and it's thanks to you that I've been able to do what I've been able to do. So that's I feel very fortunate. And if I didn't make the choice to go into this full time, I might have been a journalist out of a job right now, like a lot of people are. Magazines I used to write for don't actually exist anymore because of things that have happened recently. So I feel really fortunate that I made some of the decisions I made, but also that you guys have been out there
interested in what I've got to say, and in many different areas. Chris Watt's case, the Everest disaster, and some of the other things. There's some of you've gone with me into the whole Vincent van Gogh thing, and all of these have been really amazing journeys. And I've just felt fortunate that I've been able to go on them. Not there yet. Your content is well worth investment for the viewer. Bria, wow, no kidding. That's something I'd like to do more in the future, is go to the places that I'm writing about. So, I've gone to following Van Gogh's footsteps. I went to Portugal. I'd really like to go to Italy, to Perugia, and to, I haven't finished the books that I've written on Amanda Knox. I'd like to go there. I'd like to go to the Himalayas for the fifth and final book in the Everest series. I'd like to meet some of the Sherpas and maybe go to Everest Base Camp, but just be in the Himalayas. I'd like to go to some of the areas I'm writing about. I'm very interested in Colorado after there've been so many cases there. Right now, the Barry Morphew case, so that to me is the next step in the true crime journey, and a very authentic step, is going to these places. I really admired the interview, I think it's called The Interview Room, going to Indiana. That's the kind of thing I would really like to be doing. It's just quite difficult going from the Southern Hemisphere to some of these places. It's not the easiest thing in the world, especially not now. Yvonne Robinson, you're so good at the lesson plan, not so good at drawing people in, but I trust everything you say. True. Okay, we're approaching 2.5 hours. I don't know if this is a new record, but I'm going to be saying goodbye. Thanks to you guys for your contributions. Laura, it's good to see you here. Bria, again, thanks for moderating. Stephanie, are you still here? I think you're not going to be here next week. Stephanie says, your analysis is a gift on Vincent van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh's such an amazing story. The character's so amazing. The art is so interesting, and the landscape, the changes in the landscape and the time. I mean, it's like time traveling, because you get to see his world through, he writes down what's happening every day. It's really quite amazing. Okay, guys, Radka says, enjoy your meal. Thank you guys very much. Remember, it's Father's Day next weekend, I think. Don't forget your dads. Grandma Green, come to Canada and talk about all the graves being uncovered. Grandma Green, I'm quite interested in the Ken and Barbie case in Canada. That's what I really mean to write about. Belinda van den Heever, night. Belinda, you in Cape Town, right? I hope you're keeping warm there. Bria, I don't know you're Canadian. Are you French Canadian? Stephanie, do you mind sharing what the focus of the fifth Everest book would be? The fifth Everest book is supposed to be Fisher versus Beaucrief. It's a little bit more than that, but it's basically that's the central point of it. It's not quite as like that as it seems, but it will focus on both of them, and to some extent on an area that I think we're not that familiar with, which is their relationship, and that it wasn't quite as great as it seemed to some people. Jennifer Dameron says, loving this live. Well, it's got 1 minute to go. Jennifer, sorry. Oh, Johannesburg. Okay. You must be quite cold as well. Okay, guys. Inspired because I rode the Everest expedition at Disney World a week ago. It was a wild ride. That is crazy that you ride an experience instead of the actual experience. That's not authentic. But I mean, I'm sure it was a wild ride. Okay, guys. Emma says, where's my dog? I think he's sleeping in the back there. Let's see if I can call him. Timmy, come. Come. Timmy, come. Come, boy. Timmy, come. Come, boy.
I think he's sleeping. Sorry, guys, I'm not going to be able to end with a high note of Timmy saying goodbye. He had his burst of energy, I think. Okay, guys, we hitting 2 hours steady, so I think I'm out of here. But good to see you here, and I'll see you guys next time.